So thank you all for being here today. Thank you, Helena, for the invitation to be here, and for Maria for moderating. As mentioned, my name is Allegra Burnette. I'm the Creative Director of Digital Media at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. So how many of you have been to MoMA? Pretty good number, okay. Well, it may not have been for a while, so I thought I'd just quickly show a video we were trying to capture sort of the essence of what goes on at the museum. There is a sound, but it's just music. And I'm not going to sing. Yeah, I've got, oh, yeah, no, it's not coming through. Okay. It's a great soundtrack. So, I mean, I think you can just see from that very quick snapshot that there's a lot going on in the museum, a lot of different projects. We have several different departments, including our most recent, which is media and performance art. We're collecting digital materials. There's all kinds of activity, but I'm trying to be fairly focused today and really talk to you about our mission and how we relate it to mobile. So this is one piece of our mission statement, which is central to the museum's mission is the encouragement of an ever deeper understanding and enjoyment of modern and contemporary art by the diverse local, national, and international audiences that it serves. So, you know, this was made part of the mission statement many years ago, but it really sort of underpins all that we do in the digital world. The museum was founded as an educational institution, and we have about 22 million visitors to the museum website and about 3 million to the physical museum. And that can be up to 60% international. So that last bit about the international audience that we serve is really, really applicable both in the museum and beyond. So our mobile program, which is a little cut off in the sides, supports that mission. And this is really kind of my life over the last few years in a snapshot. So that's it. And really, I think our program has ranged from audio tours to mobile websites to apps. And the focus has really been about the visitor experience, both in the museum and outside of the museum. So today I'm going to talk about our most recent project, which is this one popping off the end here, which is MoMA Audio Plus. So the museum has a long history of creating rich audio content, which includes interview-based tours for the collection and special exhibitions, a visual descriptions tour, which was developed with and for blind and partially sighted, and a kids tour. The visual descriptions tour is actually very popular because for people who don't understand modern and contemporary art, because it literally tells you what you're looking at, and people find that very, comforting and a way to kind of get access to the works. The audio tours are free of charge, and they're the only free interpretive content that we have that's available in 9 languages. So in 2005, we were able to start offering these for free through a sponsorship from Bloomberg. And as a result, the audio has become one of the most widely used resources that we have in general. So we've used it in places like, apps and the website, iTunes U, the mobile programs, the Google Art Project, and on YouTube. We also have spent many years working with an outside vendor to produce the audio content while retaining copyright to this material, which sounds kind of obvious, but at least for American museums has not historically been the case. So what this means, free distribution and copyright ownership, means that we can really offer it in any number of different channels, such as these shown here. And the audio really became the basis for our entire mobile program, starting with the browser-based Wi-Fi tour in 2008, and now includes apps for both Android and iOS. So in early July of this year, we launched a beta program with a new MoMA Audio Plus mobile guide, which is currently available only in the museum, and in the coming months will be available for download as a free download to your own device. And that version will replace the existing app in both the Android and iOS stores. And part of that is really to build on this basis. We have about 1 million downloads of our current app, so we wanted to really take advantage of that, that user base. So again, you can see that this progression is really, a progression over time. It's not a program that came out of nowhere. This is really something that we've been growing over quite a number of years. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was the collaboration part of this whole conference, because this was a project that really launched a new way for us to work across the museum. In the spring of last year, we started a cross-departmental working group called RISE, which stands for, at the top, you can guess what it says, Reimagining Interpretive Support and Engagement. So while a lot of this was about looking at the mobile program, it was also looking at learning spaces, the way that we did gallery talks, basically anything about interpretation. And it was really kind of just let's start over, let's look at this with a clear view and see where we, try some things out and see where we go from here. But really, the part that I'm going to focus on a bit more is the desire to replace. We had these existing audio wands, which are those push-button ones that you just push in the number and you listen to the audio tour. And we had an existing contract coming up, but we knew we wanted to replace it with another more contemporary kind of device. But beyond that, we hadn't really sort of planned too much. But again, this whole process was really about looking at, our general interpretive content offerings, physical spaces, even comfort, like where do you sit in the museum and things like that, which are also very related to things like an audio tour. So this group really consisted of people from education, digital media, curatorial, IT, information technology, and included even finance, development, and obviously visitor services. So we kind of broke it up into these different groups to look at different aspects of this project. So one group was really focusing on the content. One was looking at devices and distribution, resources and sponsorship. How do we get all this done? Infrastructure and software. What is it? How do we build it? And then really social engagement and participation. And this is really a lot of where the visitor input comes in, because the visitor experience was really central to all of this, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And sort of circling through all of this was really about research, experimentation, and assessment. And so I want to sort of walk you through a little bit of the research that we did. So we did a number of research projects, the first of which was asking people who I thought suddenly that was my audio. Asking people who come in. So this was interviewing people who were standing waiting to pick up an audio wand, who had a smartphone likely with them. So what we were trying to do is figure out, why are they picking this up when there's a way to download that and get access to that content already online. And we do have free Wi-Fi, I should mention too. So all of the content of this program is also available online. So what we found is that 74% said it was easier to pick up this other device. And a lot of it, because we have such an international audience, a lot of it was about things like, not wanting to use up the charge on their phone battery while they're traveling. And even though we do have the Wi-Fi, being concerned about data plans or being charged for roaming and things like that. So it really became clear that, people are coming with their own device, but that's not necessarily their first preference of what to do. And I do think that as I talk about this research, it is important to keep in mind that these findings may be very specific to MoMA, and if you're doing a project like this, you might want to do similar kinds of research, because the audio program is free, as I mentioned, and our international audience is between 50 and 60% of the people. So again, they're coming with an idea about how to use their own device in another country as well. So I would keep that in mind. And then, so people who were actually using their own devices at MoMA, what were they doing? And we found, of the people that we talked to, and now this is not comprehensive, this is a selection of people, that about 3/4 had a mobile device with them, and more than half of those who had a mobile device had an iPhone. And we interviewed them of what they tended to do when they were in the museum, and then we found that they really had sort of 3 buckets of major activities. One is searching for information about specific artists or works of art. Another one was taking photographs, and then of sharing those photos through email or social media. So I think both of these kinds of research we're definitely going to keep doing because we know that people's habits change and the technology is changing. But this was something that we did internally with an inside fellow who was a research fellow. So very little cost, but it really was a very effective way to kind of find out what people were doing at the museum. We also wanted to find out more about the content side of things. We had all of this existing audio content, but what does that mean for this program? So we had people stand around works of art, like this is Duchamp's bicycle wheel, which a lot of people sort of look at and go, why is that art? And you have a long conversation about why that might be art. And so really looking at this, the content grouped into different buckets. So artist inspiration and intent, the why of this object, historical and personal context, materials and process, so sort of the how, curatorial decisions. Why did the curators decide to acquire this for the museum? What was the thinking behind that? And all consistently was relevance today. Why should I care about this object now? It might have been, ground changing, 30 years ago. Why do I care about it now? So out of all of this research, we really made some key decisions. So first of all was really to continue to provide devices. We went into this project thinking that we were going to be almost entirely, bring your own device. We weren't going to distribute wands or iPods or anything like that. We came out of this research saying we have to keep the numbers equal, at least for the time being. So we went from 2,000 audio wands to 2,000 iPod touches, which is not an easy shift, but and we will continue to maintain that level until we sort of see that the trends are changing. Another decision was really to make sure that we had external operations support, both for the management of the devices, the distributing them to the public and things like that. We didn't want to take that on ourselves. So we brought in a vendor who deals with the 2,000 devices, which you see in the very spacious storage place. It's New York. You have to use what space you have. The vendor also works with our education department to create the new audio content. So, and then another decision based on both our audience usage, the fact that both our mobile web audience and the in-museum audience was primarily iOS, and also our in-house expertise, we did decide to prioritize the iOS version for the in-museum device. And again, when we do the downloadable version, that will be the first one, but followed by Android as well. And then we also, in terms of the features and content, decided to integrate the photo taking and sharing into the app, as well as find ways to aggregate and layer in the wealth of non-audio content that we'd produced over the years, such as interpretive text. And we wanted it to be easier than ever for visitors to discover multiple perspectives and points of information on a single object. And then we also found that many people still looked for the term audio guides in promotion and signage. So despite the fact that we diversified the content beyond audio, and we sort of brainstormed all these fun new names, lots of MoMA, something or other, Mama, something or other. But we ultimately decided to brand the next iteration MoMA Audio Plus. Because it was a word that our visitors looked out for, but the plus sort of signified that it was something new, that was something different that was being added on to. So this is just showing the branding. So armed with all of this research, we'd made all these decisions. We're now ready to, put the pedal to the metal and actually do this project. So we embarked on a series of workshops that, with the content subgroup, using a process that's used in agile development, where we would each take the sort of persona of a visitor and say, as a particular visitor role, I can do a particular task in order to achieve a certain goal. And so we came up with many, many of these stories and then sorted through those and prioritized which ones we wanted to keep. And it's a great way to sort of get out of your box of thinking and put yourself in the point of view of a visitor. So the program itself, we developed, my team programmed it with some outside support from an agile development firm. And this was a new way of working for us working, and again, very collaborative process. Part of it involves pair programming, where the two programmers literally sitting side by side programming on the same code, which sort of gets you through those bumps and hurdles when you sort of have a mental roadblock. You're kind of talking through that whole process. We also did a lot of test-driven development where you write tests before you actually produce something. And what that means is your QA time at the end is much more reduced, because every time you add a new feature, you can tell if you've broken something. And then, basically what this process means is that you're doing different releases of a working app. So this is great when you're working on a project with a lot of people, where you can show something all along the way at different stages. It might have 2 out of the 50 features it has, but those are working features, and people can come along on the ride with you and see how the program develops. So it's something that, yes, it's kind of a technical way of proceeding, but it has this impact on how the project works across the institution in general. And this whole notion of defining the schedule by these individual stories rather than by sort of deadlines. And it's a very different way for museums to work. You're used to sort of saying, by this date, I'll have this project which has X features. And that's not the way we're working anymore. We're sort of saying, we're going to prioritize all these features. We may have a hard deadline of a launch date, but we're going to launch with whatever features we prioritized at that point, and then we're going to keep working on the project after that. So that's what this timeline kind of shows, is this first release. We've been working on updates and doing some releases. We're going to start working on the additional features for the public downloadable version, and that will be released in the spring of next year. So for the app itself, I just wanted to sort of highlight a couple of features. I mean, the browse and search is obviously very key to this. The existing app that we have is very text and list-based, and this one we wanted to be very image-based, partly because the first use of it is in the galleries, and you want to be able to quickly identify visually what it is that you want to find out about. And it can work as a traditional audio guide, where you just type in the number and call up the content, or you can search for an artist or a work of art. And then going back to that idea of going beyond the audio content, we're really aggregating content around each object. So that includes, in addition to the audio, things like the object labels, text excerpts from publications, audio transcripts, and things like that. We also have a text-to-speech function for both for accessibility, but also so that if you want to access this written text while you're walking around the gallery, you don't have to do it like this and walking into people. You can just listen to it. And the voices have gotten a lot better. They're still slightly robotic, but definitely a lot better. And then we integrated the camera functionality. And we sort of thought, well, we had this in the existing app. People like to take pictures. It's going to be a fun activity to have. And people can take pictures and then they can share them by email or through their path, which I'll talk about in a second. But what was sort of astonishing was how popular this was. So it was so popular that after a couple weeks in the beginning, we had to disable it for a while we made some back-end adjustments to account for the popularity. But then when we relaunched it, in about, in a couple of months, we had over 800,000 images. So that can be anywhere from 3 to 20,000 pictures a day, which can average about 10 images of user. So, people are walking into the museum with their own camera or device, yet they're using this to take pictures. And it's an interesting way to, thing to think about, like taking experiences that visitors do anyway and sort of making it part of this program. So this last feature is My Path. So in addition to the pictures that you take, everything that you do in the app is saved. So all the audio you listen to or the text that you read. And then if you enter your email address before you hand back the device, you get an email with a link back to the website. So on the dashboard on the device has sort of 3 views. This kind of statistical view of your visit, so how long your visit was, the works of art that you looked at in the app, various things like that, the artists that you viewed the most, and then a timeline, so you can track what you looked at during your visit, and then by grouping of types, so things that you favorited or your photos and things like that. And then this shows that link back to the website. And so what we're really trying to think about is, how do you take this experience in the museum and connect it back when people leave? How do you sort of go across devices? How do you go across physical boundaries? And how do you, keep that engagement going? So this is sort of the beginning of where we're headed. I think, we're about to start reimagining MoMA.org all over again, which seems to be something you have to do every couple of years. But this is sort of our starting point for that. How can we both give visitors more personalized, direct information, but also, there's a lot we can learn about what people are doing through this information. So, all of this sort of statistical data, we can get an overview and really get a better understanding of what our visitors are doing. So I think I have a very quick little clip, if it plays. Oops. It's not playing. Okay. Anyway, I would be happy to show it to you later. But some takeaways, I'm trying to, this is a particular project, but I'm trying to use it as a way to show you some of the processes that we've started to put into place. And I think some of the things that are more applicable well beyond this are, really the importance of collaboration. It's not just in the title of this conference, it's really become central to what we do, especially as digital is across all different departments. And so we really need to, while my department, digital media, is kind of the hub around which all this production happens, we're working across the institution very broadly. And so I think that if you set that collaboration up from the beginning and bring everybody along with you on the project, it makes for a much easier process. And then really incorporating visitor behaviors and stories. So again, putting yourself in the position of your visitors all the time and really using that lens to look at what they're doing and what you want them to be able to do with whatever your project is. And again, the research is a big part of that. And then this content plan where we looked at both existing content and how we would start to approach new content. So that little bullet point of what people really want for content is something we're thinking about putting on a Post-it next to every curator's computer, just to remind them of these are the things people really want to know about. Don't forget to kind of touch on those. And then mobile is really just one element. This is the part of the project that I focus on, but again, this project is about interpretation in the museum and how do we engage with our visitors. And then the importance of ongoing and iterative research and evaluation. It's better to do, in my mind, to do many small research projects that tell you things along the way than kind of these monolithic ones that create this big, heavy report that you put on your desk and 6 months later it's out of date and you haven't actually read the whole thing anyway. And then finally, the launch is just the beginning. I think with all of these projects, we really have to think about how you maintain them and how you manage them, how you grow them well after you launch it. So that's the thing that got cut off at the end, but possibly the most important one. It really is just the beginning. So with that, thank you.